Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we would go through the Raining Fire changelog today since, well, I didn't cover any of the preliminary notes because I thought a bunch of stuff would change. Generally, this update of the year, technically this one is update 1.101, and it is the third update of the year. Generally, this update, so if you have a look in the past at, stuff like night vision from last year, stuff like ERA that we've had in the past, even the helicopters update. Normally, this update brings a ton of new mechanics, a ton of new things in the form of mechanics instead of just vehicles, and that's basically what we're getting this update. So we're getting a bunch of new and interesting mechanics and also some vehicles on top of it. I've seen this update get some harsh criticism because of the fact that it doesn't have a metric ton of vehicles in it, and all I have to say is if you have a look at the last few years in War Thunder, they've added a ridiculous amount of vehicles compared to the previous ones. They have been ramping up production, even if you just look at the general numbers, even if you remove China, as I'm sure many people would, the numbers that have been added to the game are astronomical compared to before. So having an update which focuses on mechanics, which will set up a bunch of ideas for the future, is, at least for me, an incredibly positive step, and I'm looking forward to it. After playing the update for a day, I only had one hard crash, so that's always nice, and that was actually fixed, the thing that actually crashed me, so that's great. Let me know your experiences of the update so far. Have you been enjoying it? What have you been playing? Have you maybe tried the new jet stuff, or have you tried, let's say, the new P-51? Anyway, let's get into the changelog itself. So obviously, there's a bunch of new vehicles. There's not really much I want to say about these since I haven't played any of them really on the live server, apart from we completed the Chiha long gun yesterday. It was a lot of fun. Upping its BR is kind of annoying because now you have to run it by itself at 2.7 with a bunch of 2.3s, but it is still a good machine. It's a derp gun at the end of the day, so once you see an enemy, it should die, and if they see you, well, you die. It's kind of as simple as that. So yeah, it is as it is goes. But if you want to know my opinions on any of these vehicles, I did go through pretty much all of them on the dev server. I don't think I actually missed any. So yeah, just go and check the dev server stuff, because my opinions haven't really changed since then. Maybe the T-72 opinions might have changed, but I haven't played it on the live yet, so we'll have to see. There's a new locations and missions, so Naval gets a new location, the Aleutian Islands. Then we have a new aircraft location for Winter Mozdok, which has been added, and new historical aircraft missions, so Mozdok Winter 43, then the 42nd Kilometer, Naro for Minsk, and Serpukov. So what's interesting about Winter Mozdok is it has pretty much the same layout as all of these new aerialistic maps. So it has a bunch of howitzers around the place, has a bunch of light pillboxes, has a bunch of medium tanks, has planes flying in, AI. So there is something to go after for everybody. And as I've said before, the addition of all of these new AI elements of aerialistic is one of the biggest positive changes that has happened to aerialistic in a long time, because it means that every type of vehicle now has a role in the game. Instead of just, either being a heavy bomber or an air superiority fighter, now stuff like light fighters, attackers, and anything around the place does actually have some kind of role on the battlefield. And Winter Mozdok shows that as well through its variety when it comes to targets to go after. So I'm very happy about that. Very, very happy. Then we have some location and mission updates. Some fixes have been made to the Moscow aircraft location. Missing rivers on the southern part of the map have been added. Then the map of the aircraft location for Moscow has been redesigned for better readability. Now it has less settlement names, but they should read normally. So I suppose it's just easier to see everything. Changes in the historical aircraft missions. So Ladoga has been reworked. So has Khalkhin-Gol, Korsun, Krimsk, Kursk, Mozdok, and Normandy. My guess is what they've done with all of these missions is probably do the same changes that were done to a bunch of other aerialistic missions recently, where just adding more AI, adding more of a battle going on and stuff. But I haven't looked at them personally, but since that seems to have been the trend going forward, that is good. It's nice to see Mozdok and Normandy reworked, because both of these maps, they were some of the newer maps which were added, which for some reason these two maps, the AI would end the battle within about 8 minutes if you left it to. So yeah, that was obviously way too short for an aerialistic battle, and it meant that stuff like attackers had a really big sway on the match because, well, they could just turn up in the air, they could shoot a few pillboxes, and then boom, your match is over in 5 minutes. So yeah, it's good to see they got reworked. Hopefully it's a positive one. They've also changed base models for bombing. They've changed them to the correct ones. Their functionality is now similar to Enduring Confrontation mode. So after destruction, bases may respawn randomly in certain positions designed for every mission. And then airfields have been removed from the target list, so they cannot be destroyed now. So you can no longer bomb out the enemy base or bomb out the enemy airfield to win the match. Instead, what you're going to have to do is grind it out through taking out various bases and also taking out ground targets. I think this is completely fine. It means that the airfield will be a little bit safer from bombing runs, and also at the same time, it does mean that you're going to have to be a little bit more choosy with what you do with your heavy bomber. Heavy bomber gameplay was pretty simple before. All you had to do is basically from spawn take a left or a right, climb at 5 degrees for a little bit, and then move in, hit bases, and then go hit the airfield, and then your job is done. Now there's going to be a little bit more thinking involved because of the random element, and also the idea that maybe you want to go after some of the AI things as well, because they might be higher priority targets. Airfield models and their location towards the center of locations has been standardized. In low-tier battles, they're located 12 kilometers from the location center. Mid-tier 20, high-tier 26. Previously, all tiers had airfields located 20 kilometers away from the location center. So this has just meant that it makes, more sense for each tier of aerialistic. Obviously, if you have slower planes, you want to have the airfields closer together. And that's basically what they're doing here, so that's completely fine. The size of an airfield now depends on the battle's rank. Good stuff. Once again, same as what I said before. Mid-tier missions now, the stage airfields located 12 kilometers away from the location center. Lovely. This is all awesome. Hopefully all of the airfield models will work, and hopefully everything will go well. So far, it looks like it is. In the Enduring Confrontation mode, in the English Channel location, a 4th seaport has been added for each side. The total number of seaports in the mission is now 8. Wonderful. That basically means that there will be more stuff going on, and hopefully Enduring Confrontation comes back soon for Naval, just to see what it looks like. Aircraft that are in the air will no longer be counted in capturing the seaports. Interesting. New Naval Enduring Confrontation in the Denmark location has been added. 4 seaports for each side, which is 8 in total, and the size of the battlefield is 86 by 86 kilometers. Well, we'll see if the big ship community comes out in force when EC is on. I'm looking forward to it. Then they added a bunch of anti-aircraft machine guns to a ton of German vehicles, basically low to mid-tier ones. This obviously is just a standard MG. I played it on the Panzer IIIN, getting the Winterketten on it, and generally it works. It's a machine gun on the top. Its elevation isn't the best, wish it was a little bit better, but it does its job. It's not as powerful as a 50 cal, obviously, but it'll do something. So it's nice to have an extra bit of firepower. The Brummbär gets an Ostketten chassis modification, and then the Winterketten is also given to a bunch of Panzer IIIs at the lower level, which was pretty cool. Something that is nice, and I know a lot of people get annoyed by this, but I was on stream yesterday. I do stream on Twitch nearly every day now. Some War Thunder if you're interested. But basically, with the Panzer IIIs, I hadn't played some of these Panzer IIIs in years, and having a Winterketten chassis modification added, which basically increases the width of the tracks and also their strength, so therefore, they should be better at certain things. But it was kind of nice going back to them. Like, I haven't played these vehicles in so long, and because something new was added to them, it actually made me go play them again. And it was just kind of a nice experience, to go to low tiers again and just kind of wander around and just shoot things and have a bit of fun. So yeah, maybe we'll do that more often. They also added LWS functionality to a bunch of vehicles, mainly Italian ones, and then some Japanese ones, the TAM2C as well, and the Merkava Mark IIB. What is interesting about this LWS functionality, the laser detection warning system, is basically the way that it works is when somebody has lasered you, when somebody has locked onto you, or when somebody is pointing something at you, and it tells you the direction it's coming from, and it tells you you are about to get donked. So it is actually quite a nice little system. We'll see how it goes later on. It might be a big factor, especially with some of the weaponry which could come in a little bit. Also, it is now tied to the modification laser rangefinder, so therefore you have an LWS LR modification. So if you gain that modification, you get both laser rangefinder and LWS. So that's how it's going to be. It's not going to be stock for the vehicle, which obviously is sad in my opinion. The more things we have stock for vehicles, the better, but at least it's not what I would class as a huge change to how the vehicle is going to go. Then a bunch of ERA was changed for top tier Soviet vehicles, and we went through the changes in the data mine the other day. So if you want to have a look at them, you can. Let's just say overall they got a little bit more beefy when it comes to dealing with certain shells. The T-92, so its ammunition has been changed from 60 to 59. A small change, but it's a change. If you're taking 59 rounds in the T-92, you're doing something wrong anyway. The Baglet Panzer 57, the reload mechanics have been reworked similar to the STRF 9040C, so crew numbers have also been reduced from 5 to 3 members. This is quite a significant nerf to the Baglet. If I'm honest, it gets a lot less survivability, and also, its main gun is not going to be as useful, mainly using the missile anyway, especially with the thermals as well, but that gun can be very powerful, especially since a lot more people are running lighter vehicles as you go up the BRs. So yeah, it's a decent nerf to the Baglet, but it still should be useful. It still also gets hull broken, so the crew one isn't too much of a change. It's just those, scenarios when you don't get hull broken, if you get shot through the turret or something when you survive, that it will change. The ZBD86, so this is the Chinese BMP-1. The model version has been specified. The BMP-1P modification has been changed on the ATGM, featuring the HJ73E modification. The default ATGM has been changed to the HJ73. Nice. This is quite a large buff for the Chinese BMP. The HJ73E is an incredibly powerful ATGM, and also the main thing is mouse guidance. So instead of having to worry about the keyboard guidance stuff, you are now mouse guided, so you can now guide it in much easier, which is the biggest change. The VK4501 and the Panzerbefehlswagen 6, the gun mantlet and turret armor has been switched to volumetric armor, and then the M60s, all of them, the gun mantlets, apart from the standard M60, the gun mantlet armor has been switched to volumetric armor. Isn't it wonderful that they're bringing in more and more of this volumetric armor? It's awesome. It really is. It's nice to see that it's spreading slowly but surely across the game to make it a little bit more realistic. The IS-2s, also the 1944s, their gun mantlet armor, upper frontal and lower frontal armor parts have been switched to volumetric armor. That's awesome too. Any changes when it's just, okay, we've added volumetric armor to this, big positive. The automatic, the turret now gets hull destroyed, I thought it did before. It should have done before. Well, at least it does now. Let's put it like that. And then for a bunch of American vehicles and American vehicles in other trees, they've changed the vertical stabilizer speed limit operation from 15 to 24 kilometers an hour. This is a big change, and it's a big buff to a lot of Shermans and a lot of other vehicles such as the Chaffee, the T20, T25. Like 24 kilometers an hour is not something to sniff at when it comes to stabilization, especially when you're the only ones around your BRs which have stabilization. It just means that now it's going to be much easier to get the first shot off as an American tanker, and when you have those wonderful rounds, you know, the APC-BCs with HE filler, it's going to be very annoying to fight these things. It was already quite annoying to fight Shermans. They were very powerful, but now they're even more powerful in what they have to deal with. Then there was a few aircraft model and characteristic weaponry changes, which is basically summed up with they've added mines to things. So a bunch of US naval aircraft have been equipped with Mark 13 Mod 0 C mines. These can actually be used just as general bombs, and they actually have more explosive mass than the general bombs that most of these vehicles take. So yeah, it's not too bad. Once again, I had to go through and respade all of these. I was completely fine doing so, because once again, there was a lot of these vehicles I hadn't played in an incredibly long time, so it was nice to just go back and kind of take a chill pill. And also you can use these respading, if you haven't got them respaded, to grind out the P51C, you know. Kill two birds with one stone, so you can experience some new content. And then we have a bunch of flight model changes. So the Focke-Wulf 190, all modifications. The automatic tailplane positionings for landing mode has been enabled to facilitate 3-point position. Flap angles have been specified. I'm actually not going to go through all of these because a lot of them are very, very small changes. If you're interested in a specific vehicle and a specific change, make sure to check out the blog itself. Then a laser detection system has been added to a bunch of helicopters. This is pretty much one of the only changes which has been added to helicopters this time, which, I'm completely fine with. A lot of the top tier helicopters got these laser detection systems, so not a surprise. Then, of course, sea mines were added to the game. So sea mines were added to a bunch of them, a bunch of vehicles across the board. One of the problems I'd say with the naval mines for air, the aviation mines, is that they were only given to one country, which was of course America. Hopefully we see more of a spread, going forward. But normally when you only give a mechanic to one country, you're going to see a ton of people play that one country, and normally it kind of screws up the matchmaking a bit. So it is nice to see that with sea mines, it's across the board. The Soviets get some, the Germans get some, the British get some, the Japanese, and also the Italians get some. The only guys who are missing is America, which is probably why they gave them to them in the aviation parts. So yeah, it's nice to see that sea mines are finally here, and hopefully here to stay, so it should be absolutely wonderful. The AI gunners for non-utility and non-automatic artillery, as well as artillery without AA rounds, cannot now shoot aerial targets. So that's something that you have to take into account, because that's going to change a lot of your functionality when it comes to what you control on your ship. So yeah, just understand that non-automatic artillery cannot now hit aerial targets. They've also added a torpedo mode to a bunch of lower tier Italian boats, so you're going to have to respade them again. I had to do that yesterday. Once again, I was fine with it. It wasn't too much of an issue. And also they've added a new reserve vehicle to the Italian tech tree, which is better than the previous reserve vehicle. But the previous reserve vehicle is still there. You just have to grind it out now. So you basically research a worse vehicle. A bug in determining greater distance by the improved rangefinder modification has been increased. Well, that's good. I'm not going through, once again, all of the specific naval changes for specific vehicles. if you want to have a look for specific vehicles, make sure to do so. The find key, I suppose, or the Control F is very useful when it comes to this kind of stuff. Then there's a bunch of naval characteristic physics and damage model changes. There's actually some of these which make a big difference. So the rudder deflection speed and maximum deflection angle has been changed. So light motorboat controls have been made much more dynamic. Escort ships with a displacement of about 800 tons will enter turns faster. Little or no change for destroyers or light cruisers, and the rudder moving time from one side to another on heavy cruisers has become about 20% faster. So they've made everything more maneuverable, nearly everything more maneuverable, but most things more maneuverable, and this has fixed stuff like the PGO-2 and also the Sparviero, which had a turning circle which was the size of the Earth. So luckily, a lot of stuff has now been fixed from this, and a lot of stuff is now way more maneuverable, so it should be a lot more fun, at least for me, in Naval Arcade, which I see more as like a run-around shooty simulator. They also added some new fire mechanic changes, so they've added damage, fire time, and ignition points have also been revisited. Every fire now has a 2-stage to it, so you have the initial stage. This has a low effect. Fire draws, dealing low damage to the crew, and mechanisms and modules take no damage. And then the main stage, the main effect, depending on fire scale, fire draws further, damaging a model where it sets, as well as modules around it. So the initial stage is short, but sufficient to bring fire down, making damage from ignition minimal. Any compartment or module can be burned out. In this case, there's a high chance that the fire will cease and won't spread. The destruction of the artillery unit or turret has a high chance to be followed by fire. This fire can also spread to other modules around. So they're basically just making the fire mechanics way more realistic, I suppose is the way to put it, which is what you want in a damage model, right? So I'm very, very happy to see these changes. They've also changed ammo storage durability of destroyers and cruisers. It's been increased for separate loading main caliber guns, so thickness of the loaded projectiles cases has been increased according to the caliber. Explosion, fire, and shrapnel resistance have been increased. So it should be a little bit harder to ammo rack some of those larger ships, which I know has been a little bit of an issue for a decent amount of players that I've talked to, where it's not really fun just turning up in a battle and then just getting ammo racked, and it feels very RNG. Well, this should at least lessen the RNG. They've also changed a bunch of crew members on a bunch of the Italian vessels. A lot of the lower tier ones got a few more crew, so they get a bit more survivability, and some of the higher tier ones, it's a little bit less. So the Corazzieri, the Genieri get less crew, and then the Bartolomeo Colleone or Colleone gets more crew. So that will change survivability of those things quite a lot. And then, as I talked about, there's a bunch of other changes for Naval if you are personally interested. Also, economy and research. So they've implemented the US fighter aircraft research tree. They did this before. I gave my opinion on this. I disagree with the change fundamentally because of the fact that it increased the grind of people through the tech tree. And as a person who sees research trees as just that, research trees, and not have these weird ideas about what I want the tree to look like or what I believe it should look like because of historical reasons, any increase in the grind is going to be met with a disagreement from myself. So therefore I disagree with the change because it's made it fundamentally harder for people to be able to grind through the American tech trees. If the research costs were changed, or if there was some way of being able to equal out the research from what it was before to what it was now, because of the way that stuff was folded before, then I would agree with the change. But unfortunately, that is not the case, which is very sad. The minimum number of Italian vehicles required to open the 5th rank has been increased. I don't think that's too much of an issue because you have to go down all of the lines anyway. So it's Yeah, you have to go down all of the lines anyway, so it doesn't really make too much of a difference. The Panzer III-L and the Panzer III-M in the German research tree have been combined into one group. Good stuff. That lessens the grind for people who don't want an extra Panzer III. And the P-47, D-25, D-28, BR and AB has been changed from 3.7 to 4.0. I don't know how much of a change this has been. I haven't played Air AB in a long time. My guess is this will be a slight change and affect their overall capabilities. The P-47s are very good in AB because they're able to pretty much do everything. They can, fight, planes, they have a ton of ammunition, they can bomb stuff, they can rocket stuff, they can pretty much do anything they want. Then a bunch of customization options are added as well. So decorations have been redistributed into new groups. I've had a look at these new groups, they make more sense, they're more specialized, so therefore you can see what you're looking at, so this is great. Late single color and late desert camouflage for Soviet top-tier tanks have been added for purchase and research. Lovely stuff. The insignia and decals have been moved to the standard camouflage layer. Previously issued decals also remain available. So this is basically for a bunch of premium vehicles. Not just premium vehicles though, event premiums as well, like the T5 is in the list. It means that you still will have access to these things, and they've been moved to the standard camouflage layer. Then the insignia and decals have been moved to the additional free camouflage testing ground 113, and the decals issued previously also remain available. This is for the KV-220 and the Grant 1, so you actually get some extra stuff there. And also, additional camouflage obtaining terms in regard to the target type have been removed from the following camos. So the A6M2, the BF-109E3, the BF-109G6, the LA5, P-40E1, P-47D28, Yak-1B, and Hurricane Mark 1 late. And a lot of the camouflages in the game for obtaining them have been recalculated. So if you start the game on this update and you play one match and wonder why you have a ton of different camouflages, that's why. If you want to see something which, this was my first game. I took a screenshot of it because it was kind of ridiculous. And obviously this just means that, it's better in general because we get, more camos. But you can see here, this is what this is what it was for me. So all of these camos straight up unlocked. I can't say that I'm unhappy with that because it's content that now I have access to, which I didn't have access to before. So yeah, it's nice to see that they were at least seem to be easier to get. The order of receiving camouflages is now shifted to a single scheme: desert, winter, forest. I think that's fair because we have a lot of desert maps now in the game. The changes will not affect any already achieved camouflages. If the new values are enough for obtaining the camouflage, you will get both immediately. Oh, that's nice. The USA winter camouflage is now a bicolor one. Germany winter camouflage will be given out before lines and spots, and the USSR camouflage, the forest and desert camos, will be switched in places. So I think that's fine. All of the camouflages are useful depending on whatever map you get on, so I'm switching them as long as they don't make one ridiculously hard to grind. It's completely fine. They've added this thing called collections, and basically what it is if you have a set of items in the game, then you will receive an overall reward. So basically, if you have, let's say, a set of assault rifles, which were, given out during events in the past, you get yourself a golden AK. If you have all of the April Fool's hats, when they did the large hats thing, you will get yourself the Hatter hat, which is basically the Mad Hatter's hat. Then if you have all the soccer balls, you are able to get a specific special ball, and yeah, it's basically a way to try and create, or trying to give people collections, so, you get something out of it. Kind of like how, in Operation Summer, if you get all the decals, then you get the werewolf decal. It's basically the same thing. That's how it's going. That's how it's all working. So yeah, the starter decal and decoration collections have been added. In the future, the number of collections will be increased. Okay, so this is a starter thing. Links to the market have been added for event decals and decorations, and the collection trophy for consoles has been added too. Well, that's good. Yeah, the collection thing is a pretty cool idea. I don't like how it's obviously market motivated. Now people who are, War Thunder economists have gone a little bit crazy over the last few days because certain items have obviously, gone up in value. But I think overall this, getting something for like collecting stuff overall is completely fine. I like the idea as long as, I'll give you an example, right? So there is a set of rifles in the game right now. And that set of rifles, I'm missing only one, and it's a Lee Enfield rifle. Now, I believe you got these from events in the past. They were random events, so if you got screwed, you got screwed. You didn't get the right stuff. But this Lee Enfield rifle, there is only one available on the Gaijin market, and it's like 80 Gaijin coin. So in a scenario like that, surely it would make sense for Gaijin to bring back an event which would give away certain stuff for those collections. Because if they're not available on the market, which would be the whole point of doing this, then you've got to somehow rejuvenate that area of it, and you do it through, an event in the future. This also does mean that they're going to push duplicate ideas more and try and force more people to use the market. I obviously inherently disagree with this. I don't like that idea as a concept because it breeds a lot of aggression between members of the community, especially when money is involved. Whenever you involve money in any of these things, you're going to annoy people. And it's very sad to see, especially during stuff like the Build-A-Bear event, where I have to hear it basically every day. The interface, the possibility of selecting the aircraft weaponry presets to a favorite block has been added. This is a very positive change, just makes everything easier to do. The camera in the fleet hangar has also been improved. Its movement is now smoother, and the camera itself is placed at the same direction from the vessel. Well, that's lovely. And then the game mechanics which have added. So as I said, there's a lot of game mechanics which have been added to the game this update, and it should be lauded for it, actually. So the first one, protection analysis for aircraft, has been added. Not a huge one, but nice to have. Shells in the damage model now have volumetric dimensions and sizes corresponding to the real size of the shell. So if you guys didn't know, this is how it happened before in War Thunder Ground Forces. If you shot a shell, the only part of it which really mattered when it came to working out how to penetrate an enemy or flying through the air was basically a single pixel in the center of the shell. So that meant that you could pixel perfect shoot people. It meant that nothing else in the shell mattered, and only that pixel mattered when you were firing. Now it takes into account the whole shell. Now, this means that you can get very awkward bounces of certain parts of armor. It does mean that there are going to be a lot of vehicles where their armor is either going to become better or worse, depending on how the shells interact with it. So it's going to be a crazy week, let's just say, going forward, but it should be now more realistic, which is awesome. I was playing the Chihar LG yesterday, and I did have some very awkward and weird bounces, which I thought I would never have, but then I had some which went through, which I thought wouldn't. So yeah, it's a little bit all over the place, but also at the same time, you got to remember now, because all of these shells have changed, pretty much everybody's going to have to relearn a bunch of stuff when fighting specific vehicles. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. In vehicle equipped with a detection warning system, a laser radiation detection system has been added, which are now able to see the sector where a signal comes from. The system now additionally detects laser rangefinders, laser missile guiding systems, etc. Wow. Okay, that's quite a big change. That's quite positive. Just means more information is power, This is better for individuals who have it. Hopefully it's not too powerful, because then we have a case of course, haves and have-nots. A mounted weapon selector feature has been introduced. The selector allows the binding of different types of armament to battle keys and the use of them simultaneously in different combinations. The new feature permits usage of mounted weapons in the original way alongside the new selector options. Good stuff. So one of the problems with the dev server that I talked about with the new edition of the missiles is with the addition of the missiles, the semi-active radar homing ones, you couldn't actually select to use them over other missiles that you had on the vehicle. So therefore, with this change, you will be able to select them. So you'll be able to select what you want to use at what time. This is very positive. In combined ground battles in SB game mode, new mechanics have been introduced where after respawn, allies will be marked for the player on the minimap for 7 seconds. This has been done to understand better the positions of the players and for better interaction between players. Huh. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I don't understand why allies can't always just be marked on the minimap, or, you know, there's two solutions. I've heard a lot of people talk about how team killing is a big issue in Simulator. There's two solutions to it. You either remove the ability to team kill, or what you do is you just make it so you have a radio range around your tank, and if you have a radio range around your tank, then you can see all of the allied vehicles near you. Simple. But I suppose this is kind of a little push towards that, just to see, you know, how it does, and then I suppose they'll see in the future if it's successful or not. The distance of the identification of naval vessels in battles has been increased, switching of the name of the ship on an enemy marker. Nice! So you'll be able to see what you're shooting at. Most of the time, you know, you can kind of tell by the turrets and tell by the overall shape, but it's still positive. In ground battles without markers, the ability to mark selected air targets for easier tracking has been added. Ah, so that isn't a bug. That's a feature. Is it supposed to automatically do that, though? Because, at least for me, it's been automatically doing it, and I feel like being able to track them, especially since you can track them to your guns and stuff, seems a little bit odd to me. I find that mechanic very weird, because it basically means that stuff like radar guided AA, you know, not as powerful as they were before compared to some of their lower tier things, if you can guide in the shells using the marker. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how useful that is. Graphics, the visual effect of an engine fire on destroyers and cruisers has been completely redesigned. New logic has been added, places where smoke and fire effects occur. If you haven't seen this before, what would happen is if there was a fire on a ship, it would just go boom. Like everything would set on fire on the ship. Now it is localized to where the fire is. This is really good. There's a bunch of sound changes. Basically, they've changed a lot of sounds when it comes to the internals of vehicles, so if you're in gunner sights and stuff. They've also changed how flying bullets and shells changed, and also stuff flying over you in general, like aircraft. I've got to say, all of the sound so far sounds absolutely wonderful, at least on the settings I have. I am very, very impressed with it. There was a few shaky starts a few weeks ago, especially with some of the sound changes, but it seems like they're slowly but surely nailing it, which is really nice to see. They also changed the M61 rotary gun, the Vulcan, to actually sound like a Vulcan, so that's awesome as well. And the last but not least thing, they've taken a few changes to the ground SB mode. So setup 2.5, they've taken away the T-34-747R, the captured German one. The setup 8.2.5, they've got rid of the IS-7. Oh no, sorry, they brought back the IS-7. And then setup 8.2.5 and 9.5, the respawn cost on the heavy tanks has been increased to 450 respawn points. So we'll see how that affects Simulator. So yeah, that is all of the changes for update 1.101 Raining Fire. There's a lot of bug fixes, there's a lot of changes to game mechanics, there's a lot of changes to vehicles. It is a very large patch with a lot of promising stuff towards the future. I've got to say, I'm very happy with it so far. and we'll have to see going forward if there are any issues with it, but at least for now, it's looking very positive. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Trigger Hippie, Universe, Conte Baraka, Elove Goat, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Hans, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.